Hey, what's up guys, Mr. G Haunter here. Hope you're doing well. And quick heads up, sorry if this one feels a little different. There's actually no horror clip in this video. Instead, I've got a virtual night walk playing in the background from a remote town where I live. Don't worry though, there's no jump scare or anything like that. I just wanted something calm but a little eerie to set the mood while you listen to the stories. And by the way, if you just want to watch the virtual walk by itself, you can find the full video linked in the description. So, in this video, you'll hear people share the most paranormal things that have ever happened to them. And honestly, some of these are pretty unsettling. The kind of stories that make you stop and think, yeah, that's not normal. Before we get started, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. Alright, get comfortable, and let's begin. I'll start with one night in summer 2012. I was with two friends standing outside a gas station when we noticed an incredibly bright light directly above us. To give you a mental image, this was in the middle of town, so there was plenty of light pollution, and yet, this light was still nearly blinding. Friend 1 went in for cigarettes, while friend 2 stayed out, staring above. I made a joke or two, but friend 2 was totally zoned out staring at the light. At some point, friend 1 comes out and notices friend 2 completely dissociated. He also makes a joke, but friend 2 doesn't react whatsoever. We literally have to drag friend 2 into the backseat of my car. That's when everything gets weirder. We're driving about 20 miles outside of town back to my parents' house and are several miles into this journey when we notice the light is following us. It's moving in a straight line, keeping up with us, and stopping at lights when we stop. And picking back up as we go down the highway. Friend 1 and I are totally freaked out at this point. Friend 2 remains silent and slack-jawed, staring out the window at it. We finally get back to my parents, and at this point, we're eerily calm about this situation. The light is directly above us again, moving almost with liquidity. It can move in small ovals, figure eights, backwards, and forwards, and it is showing us all of these motions. We lay in the grass, watching it. It finally just disappears. Friend 1 stands up and vomits. We realize friend 2 has been on all fours and vomiting for some time. I'm somehow fine. Friend 1 is lucid and was like, that was so fucking weird? I wasn't even feeling sick? Friend 2, let's get you up, buddy. Friend 2 becomes uncharacteristically aggressive. It takes several minutes to talk him down. I end up putting him in the backseat of friend 1's car, where he lay down and immediately fell asleep. The next day, I text them both, like, what a fucking night, right? A friend said, for real, what was all that about? A friend said, what are y'all talking about? To this day, friend 2 remembers nothing about that night beyond arriving at the gas station. For a long time, he thought friend 1 and I were trolling him about all of it. Another spooky story on par with that experience. I was staying in an old penthouse in Oaxaca a few summers back. I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a bearded man standing in the room, clear as day. Confused, I thought it may have been my friend I was staying in the room with for a moment. I rubbed my eyes and readjusted my focus. Nope. Not my friend and definitely there. A cold chill ran down my spine, and I remember thinking, just look away. I did, for a few minutes, then looked back. Still there. He turned towards me and faded out of vision. I remember feeling eerily calm. I did really have to use the bathroom, so I ended up biting the bullet and simply walking through the area where the dude just was. It felt odd. Drafty in a room with no air conditioning. The day before, I'd been at the penthouse alone, finishing up some work, and heard people talking. I assumed my friends had come back early, so I yelled something at them. No response, but I can still hear them. So I walk down the hallway towards the noise. I hear them. As soon as I arrive in the living room, it's like a stereo was suddenly turned off. Not a sound. I check their locations, and they're over a mile away. I go back to my room and hear it again. I assumed I was losing my mind. When I was 4, my family lived in an old house that had been converted into a duplex. The house was in the older part of town, probably a 1930s era home. It had all original hardwood floors that had the most god-awful splinters in them. I hated the house so bad, I called it the yucky house. So many things happened here, but the most significant part was my ghost friend. I was so little I don't remember this part, but when we moved I told my grandma, I'm going to miss the people there. It wasn't until years later I realized something was majorly off about one of my memories. There was, the little boy. We were a family of all girls, aside from my dad. No boys at all. My baby sister and I shared a room, I was in a daybed, and she had a crib. I remember crawling out of bed one night and lying on the floor next to our toy box. I was lying next to my friend, the little boy, face to face. I could see his face clearly, his blonde hair and white skin, and the fact that he was just a little older than me, maybe 6. We stayed up all night talking until he told me he had to go. I got back in bed, and that's all I remember. I wish I could remember our conversation. I wasn't scared a bit. In fact, I was comforted by him. We were friends, and I still ponder on what the hell we were doing and if I saw him more than that one encounter I remember. Alright, here's one of many. I'll leave out many details, but that'd be 24 hours of a month plus long saga. Real estate photographer here, back when I was in my early 20s and still living at my parents' house. Back then I used to take my car alone at night just to listen to music and get out of the house. So I do just that and end up driving for a good 45 minutes into a small town I don't really know, just turning whenever I feel like it and then stopping in front of a house. It's probably 2 a.m. at that point. Looking at that house, there were these windows in the roof like those Canadian houses have. For some reason, I feel like someone's watching me, so I look over there, and as I do, the curtain goes to the side like someone's looking. But there's no one, pitch black behind the curtain. I just smile and think to myself, you can't get me from here, ha. Then just smile and decide it's late. I have to go to bed, I've got a shooting the next day in the morning. So I just start the car, continue a little on the road there, turn around in someone's driveway, and get back home. The next morning, I wake up late, of course, as I went to bed so late. Shooting was like at 10, but it was 9:45, and I had 45 minutes of driving to do to get there. To my surprise, it was in that same town I was the night before. Anyways, I jump in my car and start feeling kind of dizzy or sleepy for some reason. I'm stressed out and tired, that must be it, right? Anyways, I kid you not, I got to that house in 10 minutes. I got in the car at 9:45 and got the address on the GPS at 9:55. But wait. The house I was going to take pictures of was the same as the one the night before with the curtains. What the hell? Anyways, I see the agent's car and figure they're inside, so I get my tripod and camera out of the car and decide to go in. The garage door was open, so I figured I'd go from there. As I approach, a Doberman with reddish eyes comes at me. And starts to bark like crazy, looking like it wants to eat me. Then the owner of the house comes out the side door and tells the dog to calm down and go back in the backyard. I was like, okay, wow, that's a well-trained dog. The guy tells me to come in, as others were already inside. As I get in, I get this odd feeling that something isn't right. Nothing about this is right. The owner starts talking with the agent about how the house is haunted and that you can hear kids playing upstairs sometimes, etc. Being sensitive to those things, I was like, had I known, I would have refused that gig. As we're moving along in the house, we can hear kids running upstairs. I figured they had kids. Going from room to room, I was left with the upstairs. As I go up, the agent I was with comes down, says he's never coming back there, and leaves. I was like, okay? Expecting to see children? Nope. No children. All doors were closed in the rooms, so I opened the first room. Masters. For some reason, it was pitch black in there, I couldn't take good pictures. I get to the doorknob to open the next one, it opens on its own. I tell myself, Jesus Christ, time to go. I speed things up and take a couple pics. Getting to the last room, there was a bed with a pile of laundry on it and a big tiger plushie. Set my tripod, and click to take a picture. Part of the picture was blurry. So I take another one. Still blurry. I look closer, it's like someone was jumping on the bed, making the things on it bounce when I was taking the picture. Knowing very well there were spirits of kids in this house by now, I just said out loud, alright kids, don't move while I take this picture. And got my picture this time just fine. As I was leaving the room, I kid you not, the head of the tiger turned, following me as I left the room. Then many other things happened that I'll cut short, but I ended up leaving the house at like 4 p.m. Leaving with all my batteries dead after maybe 100 pictures. Those batteries usually lasted me for weeks. I left without taking the outside pictures, as it was getting dark. When I came back the next day for pictures, I talked to the neighbors about the dog that wasn't there that time. They told me there never had been a dog at that house. I could hear the kids playing outside in the yard. There were no kids. I did some research on that house afterwards. Turns out the family that lived there in the early 1900s was one where the father just killed his wife and 2 young daughters in the woods behind the property in cold blood one day and then committed suicide. I'm sure those were his daughters playing and that the house is still haunted by that guy to this day. The owner was real but clearly possessed by that demon that lived there. The dog seems to not be real, though. No idea how that's possible. One detail I could tell you is when I got out of the place, I went that night to see some friends and clearly was possessed by that entity as well. That place was no joke. I never passed in front of it ever again. Never heard of the agents either. Just talking about it gives me chills all over my body. I grew up in what you could consider a haunted house. It was brand new when we moved in during the 90s, but it was in a country area where there had been battles and likely Native Americans. Being in a haunted house didn't mean things would happen every day, but there would be some strange incidents. Most of the time it was targeted toward my mom, I think because she was the most receptive to it. She was more intrigued and almost excited about it. My dad would brush it off that there was nothing happening. Most of the stuff toward the beginning was mild. The TV would fight with you for the volume, so you'd turn it up and it would be pushed to mute. My mom was holding the only selector in her hand, watching as the TV was fighting with her for the volume. There would be a feeling of something heavy jumping on the bed at night. Footstep sounds. Stuff like that. It seemed like over time, as we lived there for a period of 19 years, that it would get more violent. My mom had a lot of the more violent occurrences, choking at night, items flinging across the room, and she saw a full apparition of a very skinny, long blonde-haired girl in a white nightgown running full speed down the stairs and dipping off to the hallway. Since that sort of describes my sister, she went to investigate, thinking something was wrong, but found no one there, and my sister was in bed sleeping. My mom got curious and decided to get an Ouija board out. She bought this Ouija board off eBay. It was some used antique. I was in my teens at the time, and I was like, oh hell no, leave that be. I refused to play, as did everyone in the house, so she was playing alone. I actually thought she was going mad for this period because she was getting obsessed with it like it possessed her. It is so bizarre thinking about it now, but it was like she was taking this Ouija board in the car to dinner. She would need it with her everywhere she went. Carried it to the toilet even. She said it was saying mama. She started acting all-knowing and suspicious toward people and saying, I know what you did in an accusatory tone. It was so weird, I thought she 100% was just losing it, and maybe it wasn't even paranormal. But maybe after a month or so of this, everyone was fed up with her and thinking she was going crazy, something scared her. I don't know what it was. One day she was like, I'm not playing it anymore. I have no idea what it said or what happened, but she was convinced it was a demon, and she had only said that it started to change into nasty speaking. We were convinced the little young girl apparition was just a lure, like a demon type thing, so it would appear non-threatening and make my mom intrigued because she loved children and being a mother. The house seemed like it really changed for the worse after that as far as activity. Doors started slamming at night. All night, we would just say it's like the air circulating badly. My sister and I were upstairs in the shared bedroom, and we were just chatting on the bed. We heard what sounded like someone taking a hammer to the wall late at night, like maybe 4 to 5 loud bangs from downstairs. It was not that uncommon for my mom to be doing some DIY project even late at night. Because she had sort of a disordered sleep schedule and would be up all hours at times. The next morning my mom goes, what the heck were you doing last night? And we looked at her like, huh? That wasn't you? She said it was not only banging but also scraping, like someone was taking a chair and scraping it over her ceiling. All I heard were the bangs. We both thought it was from different areas of the house. My sister had been in bed asleep when the door was creaking loudly back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Her initial thought was wind and that the window was open. She remembered she closed it the night before and sat bolt upright looking at the door just moving by itself back and forth, back and forth. She yelled, go away, ghost. And it stopped. So what happened to me personally? I didn't have so many personal experiences because I was very unreceptive and didn't want ghosts. Also, I kind of just thought maybe they were not real, like maybe my mom was too imaginative, kind of continuous denial. But during this time it seemed like it got more powerful and less dormant. It was late at night, the entire family was upstairs watching a movie in what we transformed into a movie room. We were going to watch another film, and so I got up and went downstairs to the kitchen to get some orange juice. I walked past the hallway, the same one that the girl vanished down, and honestly even as a child that hallway freaked me out a little, I'm not sure why. It was kind of like The Shining, where you look at it and just feel like you're being watched or, more aptly, stalked because it feels like a violent intention to the watching feeling, so I never liked it. But I'm not thinking much aside from getting orange juice. I put the orange juice carton on the counter, getting a glass. About 3 to 4 feet away from me at the end of the counter was the trash bin. My mom had hung up this heavy bead curtain kind of to disguise the bin being there, I guess. This bead curtain was heavy, though, like it had some weight to it. I'm pouring orange juice, and this bead curtain swings out like someone slapped it really hard, like they punched it. I'm just staring at this curtain and watching it swing. Feeling a bit freaked out and can't think of or see a logical reason this would happen. Nothing fell on it or anything. I'm not sure if I imagined this or not because I was now freaked out. But I could have sworn I saw a dark black shadow person dart off in the corner of my eye to that cursed hallway area. I just collected my orange juice and went upstairs calmly but quickly. We ended up going to a Catholic priest. I know it sounds like a fictional story even now I'm thinking about it, and getting some advice about the Ouija board. He was a bit freaked out, seeing as we told him the events. My mom shared her more violent events that occurred. He gave us the advice to cut the board up in 7 pieces and burn it away from the house, and he gave us holy water. We ended up getting the cooker out in the backyard. My dad was like, okay, let's cook the thing. He was tired of my mom being obsessed with it, and so we cut it up in 7 pieces and burned it. As soon as we burned it, the embers rose and snow started falling. This wasn't a usual part of the area to get snow and was rare to see. So it was a very strange coincidence, or maybe it was connected, I have no idea. The activity died down for a while but then seemed to return, with my mom hearing someone calling her name and my dad finally seeing his first shadow person ghost after all the years he denied it was haunted. But yeah. We moved shortly after. We live in a house now that I wouldn't consider haunted at all. There have been maybe 1 to 3 instances since living here since 2013. But I refuse to believe there's a ghost here, and even if there is, it's nowhere near as much activity as that old house. I lived in the house from age 1 until about 20. Most of the stuff from 1 until maybe age 16 was fairly benign stuff, like lights would flicker, the sound of the radio would blare, waking up my dad, who would get mad, or items would be moved or vanish, and it would just cause frustration. But it was those things that maybe you could just brush away to, oh, it's the electricity. The thing was it would be completely normal in the house for months, and then there would be a weird incident, so it wasn't constant activity, it just got a lot worse after the sighting of that apparition. My mom was in her early 50s at the time the activity picked up. There were a few things I can remember that were strange when I was a really young child, maybe 3, but it's like things that I'm not sure if they were real or just the imagination of a young child. I remember being scared of that hallway for one. The aforementioned creepy hallway. I never wanted to go down it alone in the dark. The second thing is that my mom had purchased a large painting from an antique auction. The painting was a Victorian setup of perfume bottles on what looked like a shelf, and then there was a fancy pink and mauve swirling curtain that framed the shelf. As a child I was terrified of this picture despite the very non-frightening imagery. I was not really the type to scare easily, but something about this picture made me think there was a face in it. I would have nightmares about this painting coming to life and looming over me. I wouldn't go in the master bathroom where it was located alone because I thought it was watching me. I never said anything about it at the time. I wasn't really a whiny or crying type of kid, so I just sucked it up. Years later, I was talking to my older sister and was like, remember that one painting? And she says, oh God, that thing always scared me so much for some reason. And I thought that was so weird because neither of us had ever talked or verbalized it, but both of us thought it was so scary, and she was 3 years older than me. I can't believe I forgot to mention this, but there were also a lot of accidents or animal deaths on the road in front of my house. We lived kind of out in the country, it's since been built up to more of a suburban area. But we lived next to horses, and we would get stray cats that we would feed. There was a curb in front of my house, and a lot of our stray cats would get run over despite the low traffic. It was really sad for me as a child, especially because my dad wouldn't let us keep the cats indoors. My mom always said something was calling them up to the road. That said, while living there in those years, a car flipped multiple times in a single crash, and a couple cars went off the road. And into our yard, a motorcycle accident occurred one night. That's a whole story. The guy survived thankfully. After we moved away, our neighbor there told us a cop had wrecked and died there. I have some theories that maybe the land was a bit of a portal, and I think a lot of the activity was drawn by my mom. I feel like she kind of encouraged it for a while because I think she loved that Victorian era type stuff, seances, psychics, antiques, and all that. I have no interest in contacting the other world myself. But yeah, since moving from that house in 2011, I've not really experienced any strange paranormal experiences save maybe one where I legitimately thought someone broke into my house because I heard footsteps walking around upstairs, and I know what it sounds like. I was mostly terrified that there was an intruder. I was almost relieved I didn't find anything. And I have insisted to myself it was just the cold weather that made the house creak or something. I don't know, I don't have any explanation, but I don't welcome any sort of ghosts into my life. I absolutely think most of them are actually just some demonic thing trying to gain your interest, and I don't play. My father and I love mushroom hunting. We try and go whenever we get the chance. I also love walking in the woods, so it's like a win-win for me. It's just one of the most relaxing things I can do. I am from Italy, and we were holidaying in southern Tuscany in an area that we were not familiar with. My father had a friend that went mushroom hunting in the area, so he asked him if he knew any good spots to go check out. We were told to go to this village up in this remote mountain area and check behind the football pitch. We drove there, and the vibes were off from the start. It was just a weird place, very run down, but I just thought it was because it was such a remote village. We start driving towards the football pitch, and I remember it feeling distinctly like Spirited Away, the Miyazaki movie. It looked like people were just there yet also abandoned. It was a freaky feeling. We park, get out of the car, and I'm frozen to the spot, crying as soon as I step out. Absolutely terrified with the certainty that I would have died there. I turn around and look at my father, and he is frozen on the spot too. My dad was in the Navy, and I have never ever seen him cry or upset, but that day he was. We look at each other, get back in the car, and drive away so quickly. I don't know what happened, but the fact that my dad felt it too meant that something was really wrong. Never again in my life have I felt that feeling of dread, knowing I would have died there. When we asked my dad's friend, he laughed and said, "Yeah, the woods do that sometimes." The freaky thing is that I told this story on a Facebook group years later, and someone messaged me asking if it was that village, which it was. He apparently had been biking in the area and got that exact same feeling in the exact same spot. I've done some research in the years since. Apparently stuff has been happening in that exact valley since the Romans, something about an Etruscan forest god living in the area. In the Middle Ages it was called something like the Bad Valley or the Sick Valley because apparently it was just not a good place to be, and only some hermits lived in it, with a legend about a local saint killing a dragon right below where the village is now, which, funnily enough, is where the football pitch is. There's also a radar base of the Italian Air Force on a hill in front of the village. Nothing major happened there during World War II as far as I know. The place is called Tirely, BTW, if any of you want to check it out. I don't think I'll ever go back there. What makes me freak out is that a complete stranger had the same experience as me and there is so much history in the area about bad entities in that forest. This was probably 2 years ago. I bought an old silver candlestick holder from a thrift market, dirt cheap, like $2. Brought it home and put it on a side table in my living room. I liked the look of it and thought maybe I can find a couple matching-ish ones down the line. My girlfriend at the time and I were joking about how if there was an object with something spooky to it, this would fit the bill. But all jokes at the end of the day. Oh, I also just moved into this unit a few weeks prior, which may or may not be important, I really have no idea. Within 2 or 3 days I wake up for work one morning, walk into my living room, and notice a nearby wooden bowl I use to carry my good energy stuff, like Palo Santo or sage or a couple more personal items, is completely filled to the brim with water. Probably a good 15 or 20 ounces. It was a largish, curved type bowl. Straight to the rim, not a drop over, no spill residue that I could tell on the wooden surface it was sitting on. So I'm immediately thinking, leaky roof. Look up, not even a hint of a crack or hole or stain or anything in the ceiling, not to mention the roof had been recently shingled. It was also next to my flat screen, and there was no splash residue on the screen like there probably would be with drops coming from 7 to 8 feet up. And I checked anyway, and no rain even happened the night before. I live in the desert. Also rain did happen later down the road, and there were no leaks happening in that spot. I've still been looking for answers. I obviously immediately got rid of the candle holder because that seemed the obvious first step, and nothing like that has happened since. Which is, like, great. But what happened? I've always lightly entertained paranormal activity like it's an interesting thought experiment. And kind of like a shrug your shoulders maybe and move on thing. Never really messed around with anything paranormal adjacent out of equal parts respect and disbelief. But after that, I don't know. Disbelief has been reduced and respect raised significantly. It was weird too because my neighbors on both sides had pretty major issues, both had been there long term. One had significant drug issues, opiates or heroin, and the other side was constantly fighting and bickering almost non-stop. So bad energy overall. It was a 3-unit older triplex type thing, so maybe it had some history? I also decided to not stay there long and opted out of my lease after 6 months or so, not strictly because of that experience, but it didn't hurt, mostly because of a slimy landlord. So my conclusion is either that I randomly did it in my sleep for no real reason, though I never sleepwalk, and so much about that behavior would be completely out of character for me, knowing myself for 30 plus years. Or something or someone else did it. Or something influenced me to do it in my sleep. I just moved into a loft at the end of September of 2020 in an old turn-of-the-century building. After the first few nights of sleeping there, a few unexplained events happened at various times in the night for a few weeks. Building's background: the loft was in a renovated building that was the first Albuquerque high school, built in 1914. It is one of the few remaining brick stones of the old Gothic collegiate-style architecture remaining in the city. One of the most historic buildings of this type was leveled in the 60s downtown. The building's use as a school ceased in 1972 as Albuquerque High School, the new AHS, operated out of a new modern building at the time, about a mile down the road. The old campus served for a few years as a high school for troubled teens until they built a modern building to suit that purpose. After that they utilized it for administrative offices and equipment storage for the APS district. In 1982 the building ceased all utilization for any purpose and was mothballed for 20 years. It sat abandoned for almost 20 years. It became a victim of break-ins, vandalization, and homeless people using it as a makeshift shelter to do drugs. The property became an eyesore and a nuisance to the city. However, it was prime real estate for the revitalization efforts for downtown ABQ, as it is within walking distance of typical downtown stuff, like bars, eateries, and coffee shops. In 2001 a developer got the approval to renovate the school into loft condos. The project started in 2002 and was completed in 2005. The first occurrence was on the third night sleeping in the place. I got woken up by somebody knocking on the door in the middle of the night. At that time I assumed I was imagining it, since it was a new place and I was not acclimated to the potential sounds that it may make. The hallways are very wide and have a lot of echo resonance. A few nights later I hear something drop on the floor. It sounded like this small remote that I have to turn on, a remote-controlled light that I have for a display case. I get up, and sure enough, that is what it was. The remote was on a shelf about 7 feet away. It managed to plop in the middle of the room. As soon as I am awake and lucid, the door knocks again. I get some pants on and open the door. Nobody is there. As mentioned before, the halls could echo fairly well, so I went down the stairs. I went down the stairs to see if it might have been another unit. There was not a single unit awake at the time. You would be able to hear it in the halls. Fast forward a week or so later. I have a suitcase that I use as an airline pilot. It's a luggage works bag, a typical flight crew bag, made with a very robust and sturdy metal frame. It weighs about 15 pounds empty. It was against a wall, standing straight up, and I heard it fall on its back. This bag needs some reasonable force to move it horizontally. Again, as soon as I wake up, the door knocks. Again, no one is there when I answer. It all ceases when I take a relic that my aunt gave me in 2016 of Saint Padre Pio of Capuchin out of a box and place it in the open on the top of one of my shelves. In my faith, if this relic has some ability to ward off a spirit, that spirit is deemed nefarious and demonic in nature. To this day no unexplained activity has occurred. Last bit of info. I met the prior tenant, who was a renter from the previous owner. He moved to another unit in the property. He said he and his guests had frequent similar events happen during his 3 years living there. He said he learned to ignore them. The relic my aunt gave is a card that has a tiny small piece of cloth that came from one of his garments he would have worn when alive. Bags that are 15 pounds and empty, these are robust bags for airline crews. They are built with a solid steel plate at the bottom and a steel frame. With the amount of use that we get out of them, compared to your average traveler, they are needed. When I first got in the airline industry, I had a simple consumer Samsonite black bag that was pretty much destroyed after 5 months of use. Some other thing, like I mentioned earlier, is that we will probably never have a definitive answer. One possibility is that it was looking for me to engage directly with it. I learned from reading interviews with exorcists that it is not a good idea to engage with these types of entities. The key takeaway was they possess a knowledge we don't have and can use that to their advantage. Some sort of intercession through the faith seems to be the best method of ridding it. I can only say approximately. It would happen about a half hour to an hour after I would be bedded down for the night. The time I would go to sleep would be around 2 a.m. or so, not exactly 2 but around that time. I am a bit of a night owl. It was early January 2011. Admission test results for the college I applied to were published on the college website. I topped the business faculty. To proceed with the enrollment formalities, we had to find our roll numbers in the bulletin board at the college premises and show it to the administrators. Yes, this was a weird requirement after online publication, but welcome to the third world, and on top of that, that was the very first year for online result publication and trust over accuracy. And the authenticity of such a result was low. Now back to the story. Each roll was an 8-digit figure, and results were published for more than 1,000 successful candidates across all three faculties, science, arts, and business, listed in numerical sequence. There were more than 20 sheets of names on a big makeshift notice board created from a few regular-sized boards. My last three digits were 209. I found 207 and 211 in, as far as I recall, sheet 16 or 17. Logically, I expected my name between them, but it wasn't there. My pride in being the exam topper was gone as I stood there, dumbfounded, frantically searching through more than a dozen sheets for 2 hours in vain. I contacted the college authority, who simply said that online results were new and couldn't be trusted. If my name was missing from the bulletin board, then I was not selected in the test. Finding no other way, I turned back for home. I need to provide a bit of explanation about the environment at that time. After those 2 hours, almost all candidates had found their marks and already left. Even the administrators who had been sitting beside the bulletin board had gone back to their rooms. Only 8 girls and 3 boys remained in the vicinity chatting among themselves. As soon as I turned around, I met a new girl standing directly opposite of me. More than a decade had passed, but I clearly remember our conversation. She said, "You didn't find your roll number?" I answered, "No." Then she replied, "What's your name?" I just silenced. She still asked, "What's your roll number?" I said it's 209. She then reacted, "Oh. I think I saw your number in the first sheet." Without saying anything, I turned around and finally found it in the very first sheet. The trick was, the college authority had listed the names of all 3 toppers in a separate table on the first sheet. Afterwards followed the sequence of successful science, arts, and finally business candidate lists. I had no idea that this could happen and had not checked it at all. I was relieved and turned around to thank her. From my turning towards the bulletin board, finding the result, and turning back, it took 10 seconds at best, and within this time, she was gone. Totally vanished. Those other girls and boys were still there. None of them were wearing the pink or maroon colored dress. The girl who helped me had been wearing, I can't remember clearly anymore. Now to discuss the geography of my college and bulletin board. The college was situated on the top of a small hill. 10 meters to the left of the bulletin board were the buildings of the arts faculty. Going towards that direction would have been directly within my peripheral vision. Behind the bulletin board was the 60 to 70 meter steep climb towards the business faculty, located on top of a larger hill. Impossible for any human to cross that in such a short time, and that too not being noticed by me since the path was totally in the open. 5 to 6 meters to the right was the science faculty and administration, where the girls and boys were chatting. Someone could hide there only behind the hallway wall since the classroom doors were all closed. Behind me was the steep decline towards the entrance of the college gate. It could be crossed within 10 seconds by running. Now, where did she go? Why would she run towards the gate or hide behind the walls? Why would she memorize an 8-digit number for no reason, which even I couldn't remember without the help of the registration card? For the first 2 or 3 days, nothing happened. I could remember her very well. I did not tell anyone about the incident. Then one day I decided to tell my parents about it, and immediately from that moment, I could not describe how she looked. Forever forgot what she looked like. Once I suddenly awoke in the night hearing voices. It was like 2 or 3 different voices, and it happened around 40 years ago when I was a little kid. One of the voices was seemingly that of a woman, the others were males. My brother was sleeping in the same room, in another bed. I looked at him, but he was calmly in his sleep. I got scared and got up from the bed. The room's door was always open, and I could see the light on in my parents' bedroom. I walked there and found my parents watching the news on the TV, so it was around 11 p.m. They noticed me scared and assumed that, being a 6-year-old, I was just afraid of the dark. They let me in on their bed, watched the news for some minutes more, and finally turned off the television to sleep, letting me sleep with them between them in the middle of the bed. I fell asleep soon, and I don't know how much time passed, but I suddenly awoke again. I was sleeping face down with my head looking to the only window of the bedroom. It was all normal there with the usual lights filtering through the curtains. But I felt the need to look behind me, and slowly I started turning my head back. I found a small source of red light on the wall at my back, which was the wall in front of the bottom of the bed, in the direction of my feet, so to speak. It was a light like that of a laser pointer, but in those days those things were not available in this country, Venezuela. It was less than an inch wide and not so bright. This red luminous point or circle was like 2 feet above me but 1 yard away from my feet. I was there, frightened, looking at it when it suddenly started to descend. I felt real fear but suddenly fell asleep again and never had a memory of anything more happening. I only remember the next morning, all normal. I never said anything of this to my parents, I don't know why, I was totally awake, and I could perfectly move during both experiences, first when I heard the voices in my room and later when I saw the light in my parents' bedroom. I don't have an explanation for this, I never have. This is not the only strange thing that has happened to me, by the way. I was alone at home with my mom one night. Summer nights. We usually let every room window open, and the doors too, so the air can flow. We have a 2-floor house and live on the top floor. Unless you do parkour, it's impossible to jump inside. Went to bed early that night. My mom fell asleep quite fast. I was reading. I remember hearing someone walk behind my wall and entering my mom's room. The sound that was made was so vivid but similar at the same time. When I heard the person come out and go towards the kitchen, I quickly went into her room, and we called the cops. 5 minutes after, 4 of them are checking the house. No one there, no one outside. No one nowhere. Fast forward 2 years, my parents told me that they kept my grandma's ashes in the house for 6 months before spreading them above my grandpa's grave. He was a militar, and it was forbidden for them to be buried together in the military cemetery. I'm pretty sure to this day that it was her I heard walking that day. A few years ago, me and my sister and family were staying in a hotel on different floors and in different rooms. Me and my sister were in one room. As we were walking to our room the first day, we both heard someone cough directly into our ears, an extremely sickly or smoker's cough. We tried to shrug it off but were super spooked as nobody was anywhere around us. Then after the show we went to, we were in bed and we both heard someone walk into our room. As we could hear them shuffling against the carpeted floor, we shut our eyes and cried into each other as we couldn't move. Eventually we slept, I have no idea how. The next day we were leaving and we said we would ask the hotel staff if this building was anything else before a hotel, and they said full seriously, oh yeah, this was a cancer hospital and the garden was their memory garden. About 2 years later there was also a shooting in the same hotel. So now it's probably double haunted and we will never be going back again. So I first have to give some context. My girlfriend had multiple experiences through her life, as she can see people. Mostly family, including her favorite aunt that passed 15 years ago, but occasionally also strangers. So when we were 2 years into the relationship, we had a huge fight. It was so bad we didn't talk for days. We both still lived at our parents'. After a couple of days, one of us initiated a talk because eventually we had to. So we went to her parents and her room. Sat there, talked for 2 hours, she cried, and I cried because of the things we both said. After we were done, we hugged and just lay down on the bed. Tired but also relieved. And at some point, before any of us said something, there was a total shift of vibe or air in her room. It instantly went cold. I got chills all over my body and the extreme sense of someone being there. And as I felt that way, she said the exact words, I know you don't like to hear it, but my aunt is here. And after that you just felt the cold air move towards us or her, and after, like, 30 seconds it was gone as quickly as it came. Turned out her aunt hugged my girlfriend. I always have been a mild believer, but this was just a confirmation. Never experienced something like that. As for most of the stories, they are with the girlfriend's aunt, so not really worth mentioning. But there is one story with a stranger that is, so here it comes. It is her story, though, so I have no proof. For context, in the southern region of my country, the province of Limburg in the Netherlands, there is a village called Valkenburg. In that village are a couple of underground quarries. They took marlstone out of there for the buildings. In World War II these quarries were also used for shelter. For villagers but also Allied soldiers. Now you can visit them and take a tour. So one time during a tour she took with her parents, she saw a soldier. That soldier apparently noticed she could see him, so he focused on her and tried to communicate. But it's the thing he did that scared her the most. Because he didn't talk to her. He just projected his feelings of fear and sadness from when he was hiding there on her. So she got an immense feeling of panic, anxiety, and the need to get out of there as soon as possible. Sadly, she wasn't able to get a name, so she couldn't do some research on the soldier after her visit. Nothing and no one knocking on my door thrice late one night. Just to be clear, I didn't open it, I didn't answer it. I know the rules about that thing. Besides, I know how my family would act anyways. My mom or dad would call my name before and as they knock. So would my bro, though at night he'd be waving his flashlight at the gaps of my door. At least if I have my headphones on, I'd notice something. But that night, and a few nights since, I'd hear 3 knocks. And it'd be no one. I'd know if it was a prank like a poorly executed ding-dong ditch because there's also a sliding door leading out of my area of the building, which is noisy to open and close. So who is it? You know, the rules. If you can hear knocks but can't see anyone through a peephole or window or camera or whatever, nor would anyone reply to your "who's that?" And you're pretty damn sure you didn't invite anyone or order anything, never open the door or window or wherever the knocks are coming from. If you're not inviting in some especially sneaky murderer, then you're probably inviting in some ghost, at best, or a demon, at worst. Another superstition here is you, as a contrast to not whistling in the woods, lest you want to call something or someone unseen over to you, say excuse me or passing through, sorry or tabi tabi po when walking through woodland, marshes, cemeteries, etc. Otherwise, risk offending a spirit crouched nearby because you bumped into it. And it impregnates you in retaliation. There are common stories here in my rural hometown of teenagers going up the wooded hills at night, not saying tabi tabi po, and some of them come back pregnant. Alright, that's gonna wrap up today's paranormal stories. And yeah, hearing things like this while walking through quiet places at night just hits different. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it if you enjoyed it. And let me know down in the comments, which story stood out to you the most. Or what's the most paranormal thing that's ever happened to you. As always, stay safe out there, and stay haunted.